My whole life they didn't want me
Taste the
to do shit.
motherfucking freedom.
You know what I'm saying? What you gonna do? Where
Get
you
kind
gonna
of
go?
crazy sometimes, you know what I'm saying?
How
You
you
just
gonna
got
make
shit
some
out
money?
here push, you know what I'm saying? Me, the way I work is I keep operating because I never fail, you know what I'm saying? I fall, I pick myself back up, I keep going, you know what I'm saying? I don't give a fuck what happens, you know?
King's
You
Logic,
can't take me
King's
down.
D.
There's no force in
There you
this
go,
world that
Juan.
can fucking cancel my energy. Fuck it, you know? Let's go, man.
I'm back. Already twisted, no need to introduce. Get lifted one line. Political rap, milk, killing cancer like pills. Pop the general, it's arsenic. Retarded to the flame. Go against the grain, feel the same numb pain. Fuck shots, grab the bottle. Getting hollow, run for cover like the day after tomorrow. You can say it's chill, life's cold, but keep it real. Undercover, lost the battle, but still won the war. Dark side of the force, mind trick, transform. Jedi John Connor, doing what you wanna. Puffin' nails, hydroponics, getting lost in the madness. Sustained at the level that you practice. On my own planet while I bring it back to Earth. Crashing like a comet and I'm coming feet first. Fuck that, already spent and it ain't no apple pie. Try to tell the truth when you living in a lie.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tills from the Chris. I'm your host, Chris White, mucosal melanoma survivor, thriver, and advocate. On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about anything and everything. It's all on the table. So, without further ado, please welcome today's guest, Danet Peterson.
I love the imperfections. It's what it's the beauty of it. So
yes,
yeah. Anyways, but definitely just wanted to connect today and just talk about two main topics, and that being both self-advocacy and awareness and prevention. And so, being from both rare melanoma diagnosis, we have a mucosal, you have an ocular. I just wanted to talk today about how that kind of meant for both of us and what that is for you and how that meant for me, and uh, fighting our different cancers, and but how they're both in kind of the same. So leading into self-advocacy, just wanted to kind of start off about the importance of kind of setting the tone for the team was always a major theme for me, and just being like, okay, I'm the captain of the ship, I'm the guy paying the bills, I'm because I was working as a new home construction manager. The way to get things done, had to bring everybody together, else you were never going to get the house built. And so that's exactly how I was fighting cancer. And so the whole theme of self-advocacy was I got to set the tone and everything. And so that's just kind of how I approached it out the gate. And so when people ask, like, how did you, feel when you first get diagnosed? I mean, that's literally, how I try to explain on how it was for me. And so I ask everybody when I start talking to them that have like a similar experience, what was that for you, and what did that mean? So in terms of self-advocacy, when you're getting diagnosed, was it something similar like that, or how did you handle it?
So when I got diagnosed, I was diagnosed in the middle of 2020. So COVID, all the restrictions, all of the, limitations on who you could have with you in the doctor's office, because they were trying to keep everybody safe. They're trying to keep everyone from getting sick. I, was in one eye doctor to figure out why I was suddenly losing vision in one eye. And then she immediately sent me to another eye doctor who then told me, like, after hours of testing while I'm alone in a room, like, you have, a torn retina, but it's from a tumor, it's not just a torn retina, like your typical torn retina. Your eye is like losing sight because there's a massive tumor in your eye. Like, do you know what ocular melanoma is? And I'm like, no, I have no. And then, like, honestly, like the moment he says the word tumor, like my brain just kind of shuts down. And so, I mean, in that first appointment, like initial diagnosis, there wasn't a whole ton of self-advocacy other than, I think, just it was helpful to ask questions. I think that was kind of the only thing I could do in the moment. I was like, well, I need to call my husband, and, can I have him come, with me to, what can he come with me to? That was kind of my first question. Cause I'm like, you guys just dropped this bomb on me by myself. So, like, what am I going to get to have him here for? And, like, how much connection, how much support can I actually have? Because this is not the kind of thing that anybody should go through by themselves. And plus, your brain kind of just hears, I mean, I feel like there's just kind of rushing in your ears when you hear the word cancer or you hear the word tumor, because it's like, like you just can't really focus after that as a patient. And so you need that that support person to help you advocate in the beginning. And so I feel like that's a big thing, is if somebody's telling you you don't get a person with you, like push for a person. If you are contemplating or, potentially going to learn of not so great news, if you're even just going back for follow-up scans, like that's something that I have constantly pushed for, is if I want a person there, I am going to push for them to be there. Because I don't like the feeling of being alone. It kind of brings back that trauma. But it is, on some level, I think, because I was alone, I had to learn to self-advocate faster. Because I had future appointments. I had lots of things that would continue to happen where like I didn't have, the luxury of having someone in that appointment with me for the entire time. And so there were times that I was by myself and I had to talk to the doctor about this and that. And I needed to kind of have the coping skills to be able to do that at a level that felt good to me. And frankly, like, because of how anxious I am as a person, asking questions and just getting answers helps kind of alleviate some of the fear and the anxiety, because it's like, I don't have to have all the answers, but can you at least give me some? Like, then my brain cannot be so freaked out. So yeah, I mean, self-advocacy in the beginning, I think for me, if I had to narrow it down, like it really just came down to asking questions and being okay to ask questions and just trusting that my doctor was there to answer my questions. Like, and that if he didn't have the answers, then I could find another doctor.
That's exactly when I think about who I'm trying to look for when trying to find something that's so specific. If every person that I'm talking to is trying to turn me away because they're not interested or they don't have any experience, that's not a good thing. And so, trying to make sure that you're comfortable with who your care team is was like supremely huge. And so from the get-go, one of the things that kind of melded with me was my original oncologist had told me, hey, I'm not a specialist in this, I'm an oncologist, but I'm not a specialist in this, but we need to send you to somewhere, that is. And so she encouraged a second opinion and everything. And so like that kind of, set the gate till I was like, well, they, encouraging, that they care, and hey, like I don't know, but you should be seeing somebody that does, when it comes to this. And so,
well, and what a good thing to have in a doctor, right? Like, you want doctors who ask questions. You want doctors who don't believe they're God.
Yeah.
Like, you want someone who believes that they want the best for you, even if that means that you don't get it in their office.
So, well, and I literally, like, prior, initially before any of my doctor meetings and stuff, my the surgeon who took my biopsy, when he called me to give me the the report, and tell me that it was a metastatic form of melanoma, and to not Google it, it's rare. And because this was like on a Friday or Thursday or Friday afternoon, and I had to call and schedule an appointment with an oncologist for the next week. And so yeah, it was on Friday afternoon because I got it on a Tuesday morning. But he told me specifically, like, he says specifically, he's like, I wouldn't tell you any of your family members and everything. He asked. I was like, I'm not married, I don't have kids and stuff. But my family does live close by. My parents and siblings. Tell him, he's like, don't Google it and stuff. Go to your meeting, and get some answers, because they're just, it's going to be bad. And I was like, what? And so he's like, I'm sorry, if there's anything I can do, let me know. And so like, I was like, dude. So, but I called and I made my appointment and I got in for that Tuesday morning. And so I did call and I told my family, hey, I got, diagnosed with this cancer and stuff, and here's what it's called. And I told them, I was like, my doctor said not to go Google it. And so, that meant for them that they wanted to go Google it.
Well, that's what it means. Like the doctors say that, and then you immediately go do it, or you put it off as long as you can, but you end up doing it anyway. Like, I had the same thing. I got told, like, oh, you have a tumor, it might be ocular melanoma, but don't Google it over the weekend. Wait until you have further testing on Tuesday and they'll confirm or deny. And I'm like, cool. So you just dangled the carrot and you want me to not bite it. Cool.
Yeah,
and I actually lasted until like Sunday night. I didn't Google anything for 2 days. And then Sunday night I caved Yeah, I caved and I Googled, and it's not pretty. If you Google ocular melanoma, like, it's not pretty.
Yeah. So I mean, I was just thankful that when I saw my, that first meeting, because I actually didn't, I think that maybe the first kind of thing I looked into, it just looked like, nothing was good. So I didn't go down and start clicking on a bunch of things. I just like saw it and was like, whoop. But I just was like, all right, I'm gonna have to go full throttle in this, not knowing how, but this is how I'm gonna do it. The rest of my, I can't control what they look up and don't look up, and so when whatever they would check into, and so, but they kind of, I guess, what I, by them doing that and me just, not knowing that, I sense, they kind of took on a lot of burden, but it was like, as long as I felt good enough to do whatever treatment it was that they were willing to give me, I was ready to do it because I was wanting, it didn't matter, I wanted that much to, like, to beat this thing and to live. So I just knew that I had to throw everything I could at it. That was the thing with, our, having a rare melanoma. So they couldn't tell me if it was going to work or not, but the only way to find out is to try. And so, to just, the whole self, if there's an opportunity, it was like my job, as an advocate to be like, hey, yeah, I can do it, or sure, well, what about this or what about that? What's plan B? What's plan C? What's plan D?
Well, yeah. And it's like always questioning, what do they want you to do? Why? And really learning how to be in the driver's seat of your own care. And I will fully admit, like, at the beginning of my diagnosis, like, I was like, if I could go back and do things differently, I would lead less from a place of fear and more from a place of just like, okay, I want to understand. Like, I mean, obviously it's a rare cancer. We have only so much research, like, but also there's enough out there that I can educate myself, and I don't need to feel rushed into a treatment plan. I don't need to feel like, like that. I think that the biggest thing that I have kind of pulled away in the last almost 3 years since my diagnosis is that fear is majorly the enemy, like, absolutely. And the medical world uses fear. I think to some level, it's like, yes, we need a healthy dose of fear. Like, you have to have a dose of fear to fight cancer. Because if you didn't have a fear of dying, then you wouldn't do anything. Like, that's a normal human thing. But I think that when the fear overshadows the ability to see clearly or to really question and delve into, like, what are you doing? Why? Is it really going to be the best thing for you? What are the side effects? Like, really just diving into as much as you can for, a short amount of time. It doesn't have to be for years, but just questioning and just learning and really determining, is plan A, B, C, or D what I want to go with and why? Because if I could go back and do it again and learn more about the type of tumor that I had and the location of where it was in my eye, I would have just had my eye removed that first time. Like, I wouldn't have gone through with the radiation treatment. I wouldn't have gone through because I was already almost blind. Like, the tumor had already killed my vision. Like, it wasn't going to come back. And my doctor could tell, like, she knew that. And the only reason for trying to preserve my eye at the time was that I'm young. Like, I was 28 when I was diagnosed. So they're like, we don't want to take your eye if we don't have to, which I get. But with the location of mine being in the very front of my eye, like, that meant that I had tons of radiation to the front of my eye, which meant the tissue would deteriorate over time. That's what radiation does to healthy tissue. It will kill it over time. And it has a half-life, and so it doesn't do it immediately, but, like, it does over time deteriorate. And mine ended up with essentially a hole in the middle of, like, the front of my eye and a cataract from radiation damage. And it was already blind, and it was shrinking. And, like, there were just so many other complications. Like, the literal only gift out of it was that I did not have any pain. Like, I don't understand how, but I didn't have any physical pain to my eye. Like, eye pressure was always good. There was no, like, associated pain after treatment. But if I could go back and do it again and ask more questions and learn more and not feel like I was in such a rush because they told me, well, if you don't get treatment, you're going to die. It's like, well, no, duh. Like, that makes sense. I understand. But also, do I have to make this decision today, or could I do some more research for a week and figure out, is this the best treatment option for where I'm at, or even get a second or a third or a fourth opinion if I really wanted to? I think it just removing that heightened level of fear can make a huge difference in how we advocate for ourselves. Because I just know that I don't always make the best decisions from a place of fear. And what I have liked moving forward is to make a decision from like a place of like intuition. So I really just try to listen to my gut. Like that's kind of what's shifted for me in the last 3 years is I'm like, okay, if intuitively I'm listening to my doctor and everything in me is saying like, ugh, no, I don't want to do that, then I'm not going to do it, even if my doctor recommends it, because my gut is telling me no. And I guess that the more that I'm learning about my own body and just listening to, my intuition and things like that, the more that I'm learning to trust that, and to trust that even if maybe what my doctor thinks isn't going to work or isn't going to be the best route, like that doesn't mean that there's not another route out there. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. It makes complete sense.
Sorry, I'm just going to ramble.
No, that's exactly it. I mean, it's hard to, really, I don't know. I always try to find it hard to just get out to really expel that. It's hard, that's why they call it, what is it? Not continuing education, but practicing medicine. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, they're practicing. They are literally figuring it out as they go. All of them. Nurses, doctors, researchers, clinical trial people, they are all figuring it out as they go.
Yeah. So when it all comes back to where I remember that, I'm like, okay, it's not, it's always a work in progress, and it's going to continue to be. And so there's no set, like, here's exactly like your protocol, here's your program,
Yeah, well, and that's one of the hard things too about a rare disease is there really is not like a specific standard of care of like, well, we know this is exactly what has to happen, every time. I think there's, to some degree, maybe there is, right? Like with an eye tumor, there's if we don't treat the eye, it will metastasize. So we have to treat the eye somehow. Traditionally it used to just be enucleation, and then it phased into radiation and proton beam therapy. And now I think there's like chemo shots to the eye that you can do. Like there's a few different options now that will like localize the cancer and locally kill it. But, just the idea that after that, like there's nothing after that. Like if it metastasizes, there's no standard of care for uveal melanoma that says, this is exactly step 1. This is step 2. This is step 3. And like, this is your branch to follow, or your path to follow as a doctor. If you're the treating physician and your patient metastasizes, like there's some loose guidelines, but again, it goes back to that whole practicing medicine. Like it's very loose and it's very dependent on a case by case thing, which I think that the more that I've learned about just cancer in general, as like, just on my own, like, I'm no expert, but I don't for a second think that one person's cure is the same as another's. I think that everybody's cause of cancer is multifaceted. And I think that everyone's cure, or, the fix for it, is going to have so many layers, and they're all going to be different, and they're going to be as unique as our fingerprints. Like that, what works for me isn't going to work for another patient who maybe has the same genetic makeup of their tumor. Like I think that there's so much room for personalization and care that only comes if the patient is willing to fight for it and willing to say, no, that doesn't sound good to me. Like, I don't want to be in a hospital bed with these side effects. So what else you got for me? Like, I want to try something else. But that takes, I think, kind of what you were saying, like it takes a certain level of courage as a patient to do that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you got to decide, like, how high can I fly, if they're going to let me be Superman. And so you got to, literally become that character, so it's like, here's your options, like, what would you do if this was your only choice? So that for me was kind of always my method, because that's the rarity of it. And so that's what kind of encouraged a lot of my advocacy to be like, hey, whenever I'm trying to schedule, scans or get my appointments, like, in front of the line, and the one of the road hurdles, that I tend to run into, and I'm, I'm sure you probably had run into this, but the coding and everything on when they're trying to schedule through insurance and that kind of thing, it's like the more rare it is, it's not not all the codes are in there, that it's not well known. The nurses, the pharmacy, like all the scheduling is just, so that's why you have to be that person, goes, look, this is very, dangerous. Trust me, it's there. It's, I promise, front of the line. You know
well,
what I mean?
and how, just to like put it out there, like I don't know exactly how far along in your diagnosis you are, but like I'm almost 3 years. I now have a metastatic diagnosis on top of my regular diagnosis, like, and my insurance is covering, for the most part, covering my cancer care, but they're starting to push back against like anything that they can, and like that just adds a whole new layer of advocacy, because now not only am I going to doctor's appointments and doing treatments and doing whatever it is that I need to do to take care of myself, now I'm also writing letters to an insurance to be like, can you please cover eye exams for my children based on maternal history? Like, you would think they'd draw the lines, but like apparently not. That's not obvious enough in all of their things they have coded for me already. Like, so now I just have more work to do. And there's so many patients in our community who they get to a certain point that insurance basically says, well, like you should be fine now. But because there's so little research in a rare disease, they don't know when you're fine. They don't know exactly when that point becomes that you're okay. And with ocular melanoma, like I metastasized within 2 to 5 years, other people don't metastasize for 15. There can't be zero monitoring in that 15 years. So that means insurance is shelling out for scans to check every year for 15 years. And that's a long time. That's a long time to then have to, as insurance changes hands and people are different, like they're, it's on a new person's desk. And now they're looking at it like, well, I've never heard of this. Like, we don't need to cover this anymore. And it's like, no, you still do. Sorry, you still do.
No, what all I do now is I just go in every 3 months and do follow-up scans. I was in a clinical trial, and actually last time I did treatment was January 2020, and so but for the previous 18 months before that, I was diagnosed in like the summer of 2018. I thought I had a hemorrhoid, and I didn't take care, go get it looked at immediately, and before I knew it, I had this lump that grew in my groin. And when I went to get that looked at, and biopsy, that's when I figured out that, hey, I got, the metastatic form mucosal melanoma and stuff. And so I had, the initial surgeries of, the lymph node, and then, the actual tumor on my rectum, and did some PET CTs, went to, sent me to MD Anderson. I did another groin dissection, did radiation. I went and got, a PET scan, thought it was all good. And it was like, hey, metastasized to, to my lungs and my liver, and, some other lymph nodes, and the chase was on, and so I was doing ipi-nivo, and then they moved me to chemotherapy because I had new growth, in other areas, and it was getting out of control. And then I did that for a little bit, and then I added more radiation to my, to everything. And so we came off of chemo, went back to ipi-nivo. I did 4 more doses, got colitis, spent 3 months fighting that. Came back from that, was, doing chemo because I couldn't do immunotherapy at the moment. And then eventually got into, my clinical trial, and I was the last person to get accepted into that trial. And, as I was getting accepted, I actually got kicked out because I got a brain tumor. And so then I had to go fight that brain tumor and the insurance and all this and that, just stabilize it, just to get back in the trial. And then so, it was basically, and then I had all the deadlines on the very last date for everything. It was like you couldn't script, it's stupid. But, that's, I did my last, I did a week of chemo. I got admitted to the hospital on January 8th on 2020. Did my week of chemo for TIL depletion, and then got admitted, gave me my TILs on the 15th of January 2020. And then after that, I did 6 doses of IL-2 to activate it. And then I got out of the hospital on the 20th of January 2020. And just did follow-ups and everything, and then I was able to get the first 6 weeks and then do a set of scans which showed everything was good, and I was due for my another set of scans 6 weeks later, but instead of going back to Colorado to do them, I had to stay in Dallas and send them because COVID hit. So as soon as I tell people, as soon as they got better, for me, in terms of like I knew that that things were turning around and all that. I was like, I could celebrate, and it was like, but I woke up from one nightmare and then or started or finished one nightmare and then another one started.
Yeah.
Because I was like, cool, cancer's gone, COVID's here. And so, but I was like, I had to try to recover by myself, and it was like, I'm kind of done actually going to treatment, but like I actually kind of look back and I think I looked a little bit worse in recovery than I did when I was actually going through my stuff, and I was almost kind of dead right before I started. So I mean, it was pretty nasty.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I mean, it's kind of like not kind of, it is like just an ongoing physically and or mentally exhausting like continuum. Like it constantly is there. It's not like,
yeah,
it's not like you wake up one day and you don't know that you're dealing with and going to have to navigate something about your rare disease that you are dealing with. Like you're constantly aware of it. And I think that, at least for me, like it's become this balance of accepting that it's always going to be a part of me. Like I will never forget. I will never forget that I don't have an eye over here because like this one is fake. This one's not real. This one can't see. Like I'm never going to wake up and not be aware of it because my whole perspective physically has changed. And I don't honestly, I think that I've heard people in our community say like, it's not like this cancer or that cancer. Like, well, you can just like wake up and forget about it. And I disagree. I think that it doesn't matter what type of cancer you have, you are always aware of it. And your body is acutely aware of that threat, and anything that goes wrong in the future, whether you're sick from the cold or COVID, or you have a new lump on your arm that you don't know where it's from, like your brain immediately goes, we're in high alert. Is this cancer again? Because you've already dealt with it. And like that level of fear, that exhaustion of like just knowing that it's always there or always a threat it's a lot. It's a lot to cope with on a day-to-day basis. I think that it can be super, super heavy at sometimes, but I think that it's, for me at least, it's been this balance of like accepting that I'm going to always have to carry this, the same as I would say like the loss of a child or something like that. Like I would never lose that. That would never stop being something I would carry and that would be hard. But I can both accept it and also accept that I don't have to let it take over my life, and I don't have to let the negativity be the only focus, if that makes sense. Because obviously, like, there's nothing really positive about cancer. Like, I mean, maybe the community, like, but honestly, like, all of us wish we weren't in this club. So, like, we would rather find each other another way.
Yeah, why does this have to be the reason that you get to communicate and get to know it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like I mean, I would so much rather get to know people because like we like, I don't know, like Harry Potter, because I love Harry Potter. Like, let's get together and hang out and have drinks because we like the same books, or because we like things, not because we're dealing with rare diseases that don't have cures and that they barely get any funding, and there's like what 5 to 10 clinical trials available, and you were talking about clinical trials and how you were the last one accepted. That's so common in rare diseases to have instances where it's like you might be metastatic and there might be clinical trials that you could do, but there may only be 3 spots and you're out of luck until one of those 3 spots opens up. And do you know why those spots open up? Because somebody flunks out of the trial or somebody dies. And that sucks. Like to even like, it's kind of like an organ donor. Like you get an organ donation from someone and you know it's because they died. Like it doesn't really feel that great.
You're thankful for it, but you're like, how yeah, I'm thankful for it, but it's hard to be thankful for it when you know where it or how it comes from.
It's like there's a cost, and there's a cost, and you're acutely aware of that cost, and that's a lot to carry. Like I mean, it's all just a lot to carry as a person.
Like it can be like a heavy weight, and that's what it was, and that's kind of how I looked at it. Was I didn't know. Well, I mean, I always believed I was going to be all good and everything was going to be okay. But I always thought, at least, I'm going out swinging, and, I'm participating, at least trying and stuff. And so, it's like when you sign your consent for a trial, you go down that, okay, well, like, it's all, at least I'm it's for the better good, you know what I mean? Like, and so they're gonna learn. And so, the actual drug that they use, they're working on getting that through FDA approval right now. So, it's like it totally did exactly what it was intended to do. This was, in the beginning of last time I did treatment in that same year of 2020, I had a complete metabolic response, and I've been scanning, every 3 months clean ever since. And I go in every 3 months for full body CTs and brain MRIs.
That's
and
amazing.
So, I mean, that's a 5 years, and then I think there's 2-year extensions after that. But the way it's completely designed is, it's basically like I was told it's like there's Pac-Man inside your body, and that's what they do is they re-engineer your cells, and they make them into these little fighter Pac-Mans, and they put them back in your body into the billions, and then they go chase around, the cancer, and they eat it up till it's gone, and the Pac-Man stays there. And then, but so it's not like the cancer goes dormant and it's like in remission, so because if it's like it wakes up and then it, is there, it's like it's, if there's any sign of it being there, like the little Pac-Man will just go and eat it, so like that's the whole thing for the TIL. And like
No, I've heard of this. There's actually one uveal melanoma patient, I think, who's had a similar treatment. I think it's the TIL treatment, and she had her treatment, I want to say back in 2019, 2020, maybe. And she's miraculously still here. Like, she's one of the very, very few people. I think there were some other things, some other factors in her situation. But that's one of those kinds of treatments that, like, when you hear about the people that do well with it, it's amazing. And just like as a patient, I think one of the things that helps kind of with the heaviness of it is to look for the gifts, look for the good things that do happen for people. Because I think too often we can get really hung up on and really hyper focused on all of the bad statistics, all of the terrible things that are happening, because sometimes, like, it's kind of like if you say you're going to buy a red car and then suddenly you see red cars everywhere. It's just like you find out your friend or somebody of your friend's friend like passed away because they no longer could sustain treatment, and then suddenly you're seeing death everywhere, and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. But I think that if we can flip the focus and just say, okay, there's just as many stories of hope, there's just as many stories of possibility, of stability out there, and to just, like, not that we're not going to honor the people that we lose, right? We honor those people, we honor the losses, but to not stay focused on the dread, I think is helpful for me, to just look for the possibility, look for the hope. And kind of like what you said, like, you kind of have to decide, like, there really is a decision, subconscious or not, there's a decision you make as a patient when you are told you have this rare disease, and that if it spreads, like, you have this and this chance. There's kind of a decision that I think happens, like, biologically in your body, where you decide, like, nope, not okay with that. Like, so, I mean, like, and it just keeps, for me, it keeps adding on, there's different things, like I've been saying for years, like, yeah, I'll be here, and I've been envisioning being here in 10 years, like seeing my kids graduate high school, like these kinds of milestones that, a year ago, I would have just cried every time I saw something like this happen, because it was like, am I even going to see this? Like, do I even get that? And I don't have the luxury of living. Well, I don't like how it feels to live with that what if, right? The what if of, what if I'm not? And so there's a friend of mine who, she's a life coach, and she was like, what if you just focus on the what ifs of possibility? Like, instead of focusing on the what ifs you don't want, like, just focus on the ones you do. And it's, small baby steps, but I mean, I'm over a year technically into a metastatic diagnosis, which 10 years ago, I would have been told you're going to die in a year. And I'm obviously not dead. Like, I'm obviously not dead yet. But like, just envisioning that possibility and looking for, like, the reasons why I believe I'll be okay. Not that the fear is gone. The fear of death is still very much there, but it's kind of more just accepting that like it will happen one day or another, but I'm going to focus on living now, and I'm going to focus on planning for the future as if it's still happening, because as far as I know, like tomorrow's still going to happen. Like, I mean, unless like a bomb drops today, like it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
I'm here today, and I will
Still
probably
going
be
down.
here tomorrow. Like, and if I'm here for enough tomorrows, then like that adds up, right?
Yeah, most definitely. You know, I went and bought a sign, I think it's in the other room, but it's the whole kind of title for the year of the Christmas when I was going through everything, because my timeline, literally, I was told, um, I scanned on December 6th. I was given the news on December 10th. The timeline where I had to scan to show that, everything was okay was on, Christmas Eve. So I had 14 days, and, it was like basically 10 business days to get it all in order and everything. And so, the whole sense of urgency, was like extremely important. And so, like,
Yeah.
that time of year, for those dates, to land on like a scan on Christmas Eve and then spend the time between that and like New Year's going, okay, like, is it gonna work? Is it not gonna work? And it was just you got to kind of like just sign it over and just be like, I was very hesitant to try to, finish, actually signing all my wills and doing all of that stuff. But it was like, because I was such in the belief that I was going to be okay and it was going to work, that it was like, this all just seems like I'm giving in to any kind of signing of this is an admittance of like, it's not going to work. And I was in such belief everything was going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I just,
Well,
that's
and
just
like,
how it was gonna
I
be.
mean, I have kids, I have, a house. Like, I mean, just all of our situation maybe is a little bit different. I don't have a will yet, like, or, any kind of a, like, I think there, for me at least, there feels like there is value in having a will and, like I can't remember, like a power of attorney, like power of medical attorney, things like that.
Yeah.
But it's actually not because of cancer. Like, it's because I have just seen too many people that I know who died suddenly in a car accident, or who just had some horrible accident happen, not related to cars. Like, there's just so many other possible things that could go wrong in life that I'm like, okay, it would probably be smart. Like, and I still haven't done it yet, but I think it's partly because of the same reason, partly because I don't like the idea of admitting, that I think that's a possibility. So I kind of feel like I have to approach it from a place of, all right, well, if it is possible, I want these things in place, but it's not going to be because of cancer. Like, it's going to be because of some other extraneous circumstance that I can't control.
On your terms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not something out of your control. I mean, like the whole, yeah, it's just, it didn't make sense. And, it's just, we're, too young for all of this, like, what are you talking about? Like, no, I'm not ready for that,
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-uh.
Well, and like, I mean,
but
there are a couple things that I think about and I'm like, ooh, I need to fix that. Because if I died suddenly in a car accident, like, I am an organ donor currently, but because I have metastatic melanoma that lives in my blood and could be hiding out somewhere waiting to remanifest one day if the treatments that I'm doing, like, just stopped working suddenly, or if it just got smarter or whatever. Like, I mean, I don't want it to, but say it did, those would be in organs that would pass on to other people. Like, and so I need to take care of that. Like, I should not be an organ donor anymore. Except for my
yeah,
prosthetic eye. Somebody could take that.
if you want it, come get it.
Like, if you want it, it's fine. Have it.
That's actually a good point, because I was an organ donor before my diagnosis, and I never changed it, and I'm still an organ donor. But it's been, I mean, I don't know if there's a certain timeline, that goes post. I mean, if
well, and like,
I don't
that's
know,
another,
are
again, back to
my
the
organs still good to
self-advocacy.
donate?
Like,
Yeah,
well,
my
like
organs
going,
good to donate.
yeah,
I have
well,
cancer. I don't have
know,
cancer.
like, you don't have cancer, like, you're fine. You're probably going to continue to be fine. But like, because of the side effects of chemo, because of the side effects of radiation, like, would they be viable?
Yeah,
And
they're gonna
I've
be
heard
long-lasting,
of,
awesome organs.
yeah, like, I've heard of people who actually had, like, one of my friends, she had, her mom was an organ donor, but her mom had been through cancer treatments and disease treatments that were Like, I mean, they mutilated her system. Like, her whole family knew that her kidneys were dead. Like, the reason she died is because her organs failed, not just for any other reason. And
Side
so
effect from all the, yeah.
she was still an organ donor though, and they insisted that they were legally required to harvest her dead, crappy organs that they couldn't even use. And so, like, just knowing that potential possibility, it's just like, I can tell and I can communicate that, like, if it came to it, you know, and I wanted to be an organ donor, I could tell my family that, and they could act on that after the fact. It doesn't have to be forced on them because my license says I'm an organ donor, because my family's going to know better than my license that I got 10 years ago, that, you know, or that's been longer than 10 years, but you know what I mean? Like, they're going to know better, and they can make that decision as the family. Like, that's, I feel like that's kind of one of those decisions that I want to reserve for my family in the future. So anyway, I feel like we're getting a little off topic. Sorry.
No, it's all good. I mean, but that's exactly, you know, I mean, kind of where I went, you know what I mean? Those are the kind of things that I just don't even think about, you know, sometimes. But it was like I had to have that in order, because I didn't have anybody to take care of that. I don't have like the checks. That's what I call single people problems, you know, because I've never been married and I don't have any, you know, skinny kids and stuff. And so I still have to reach out to, like, you know, siblings and parents or whoever, and just be like, you know, but you know, I don't have really a whole lot to, you know, get it, you know, will away. So it wasn't like a real long, you know, process or anything. So
Yeah, no, for
it
sure.
was just like, you know, but the whole fact of trying to do that, you know what I mean? So, but anyways,
Well, was there anything else you want to cover, like, in maybe the next 5 minutes?
you know what? I mean, like, I think I kind of love the flow, like how it went. I mean, I'm not nothing really specifically. I mean, there's main kind of things I wanted to talk about self-advocacy and, like,
Yeah. Well,
you
I feel
know,
like we
how that leads
definitely
to
covered
awareness.
that.
Because because, you know, when you have a rare kind of cancer, you know, it doesn't fall in the regular boat that, you know, you have to explain it, and it's frustrating, and that's just basically it, because it gets exhausting, you know what I mean?
Well, and, like, to go back to something, that we touched on Monday, like, you kind of have to learn as a patient, like, you have to learn who really is worth you investing the energy to explain, right? Because it is exhausting to explain, like, especially if you do it over and over and over again, like, in a short period of time. Like, I went to ASCO, which is the cancer convention, and I told my story. Like, I kid you not, I told my story nonstop for 8 hours a day for 3 days straight. And I went home and I, like, was so tired, and I could not figure out. I'm like, I feel like this was great. This was so much fun. I felt energetic. I felt like I was on cloud nine, like, talking to so many people. Like, I'm a very extroverted person. So I was like, why am I so tired? And it came down to the fact that I was constantly sharing my story and reliving that and just rehashing it and explaining to person after person after person who had no idea what ocular melanoma was. And that was a lot. Like, that was super exhausting to do. So I think just learning as a patient to set boundaries with yourself, like, that's part of advocacy too. It's not just in the doctor's office. It's with your family members. It's with your friends. It's learning that you are in charge, and that if you don't want to talk about cancer, if your friend is like, well, how's your cancer treatment going? And you're like, it's shit, I don't want to talk about it today. Like, that's it. That's fine. That's an answer. You can also just ignore it and move on in the conversation. And if they want to revisit it at another time when you feel like you can respond, also valid. Like, that's one of the biggest things that I think I gave myself permission to do, was just accept that there were no rules. There was not a rule book for how I was supposed to handle cancer. I could write about it on Facebook, or I could not. I could tell my family members when I wanted to, or I could not. I could really just do whatever the hell felt the best for me, because I was the guinea pig here. And it was my experience going through it for the very first time, and nobody else could tell me how to live that experience. I had to experience it myself. And that meant that sometimes I learned from doing something that I didn't like how it felt afterwards, like ASCO. Like, I loved ASCO, but I did not love telling my story for 8 hours straight and how exhausted that felt afterwards. So if I were to do it again, I probably would take a break and like do 2 hours here and then you take a break and do something else. But just those kinds of things, those learning curves, they happen and they're a part of the journey of becoming your own advocate. I mean, obviously, like, yes, insurance, doctor's office, but it also extends to the boundaries you set for yourself and the way that you allow cancer space in your life. And I think that you get to decide what those terms look like and how high the fence is. And sometimes that means that it's really high because you don't give a crap and you want to just focus on living. And like, maybe between scans, you're like, I don't want to worry about it. So I'm going to just pretend it doesn't exist for 3 months. That's valid. Like, I don't think there are rules for how we're supposed to do this. I think we're all figuring it out and we all just need to trust that we're going to do what's best for us. And that doesn't mean we're being selfish in like a negative way. I think there are ways to be selfish that are survival skills, really, if we kind of get down to it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I totally agree. So, I mean, that'd be like the perfect thing for us next time we get together is talk about that exact topic.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do that. We can definitely get together and just kind of expand on that.
Yeah, because that would be I mean, I think about that all the time. I mean, it's literally what kind of drives my motivation and everything. So, let's do it. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. So,
yeah, of course.
I appreciate you.
Thanks for hanging out super late with me over here in Arizona.
It is all good, like I said, I got, my time zones I don't even know. So I couldn't tell you what time it is, doesn't matter. So
that's the best thing.
I appreciate you jumping on.
Be catering to time zones. All right. Well, I will let you go.
Yeah.
I will talk to you later, Chris.
You take care.